have a population that you're yet to touch. If we are to talk the true debt story, if we are to talk true inequality, and if we are to talk true poverty, there's a population that we are yet to reach. We have a lady called Miriam who lives in Kuria. She trades around the Hispania border. If you've been to Migori County, or when you hear Migori, I know what we are all thinking about, because that's what we read so much about Migori. Huh? Sharon. Okay. And in the process of her trading, she's also in a marriage arrangement, which traditionally it's called Nyumbamboke. If you've been to Kuria, then you know what it means, that a woman who is perceived to be wealthy marries other women to bear children for her, and she decides who will father their children, okay, and makes all the decisions about them. So Miriam is in such an arrangement. She got married when she was 14 after undergoing female genital mutilation. I know now some of you are asking, hey, where is this taking us? Miriam is your audience. And so she never went to school because, according to the parents and the people around her, they believed she didn't have to. And why would the family waste resources take her to school? And after all, she will get married. But here she is. She has 4 of her own, and they're equally not in school. Why? Because the 1024, if you associate with the Ministry of Education, you'll know is it 1024? Allocation per child, okay? Probably didn't reach the school, and so her children are not in school. But she equally has brothers who went to school, and at some point they dropped off. But their father still receives SMSs from the teachers that he hasn't paid some school levy. Yet the father knows that his sons dropped out of school, and they're doing sand harvesting. And so Miriam comes across people who purport to be collecting some fees, taxes, and everything else. But because she has to trade, she will pay. But as she pays, she knows she's digging into what could have guaranteed her family a meal for that day, other than the porridge that they took. And so she pays. And later in the week, she sits with some young people called activista. You know, as you're selling what you're selling, you find the young boys, young girls. And they're talking about the budget, and they're talking about taxes, and they're talking about rights, and they're talking about participation. And so this is Miriam. And this is your audience. And this is one person in the community that if you manage to involve her in this process, then we will now say we are doing a right or the best conversation around debt. Why? Because the impact of debt hits her harder than anyone sitting here. And unfortunately, such people are many, and they make the largest population. Unfortunately, majority of them are women who suffer the brunt. Why did I use Miriam's story? I've used Miriam's story because as journalists, there are 3 things that we are expected to do: to educate, inform, and entertain. Miriam is likely to speak about the entertainment because it's probably something that will make her laugh. if she happens to sit in a vehicle where the radio is on or gets to hear people discuss what's on the papers? Who informs her? Who educates Miriam? Why the gap? And so in whatever we do, there are many Miriams out there. But for us as ActionAid, we only derive contentment when we work with the Miriams that I'm talking about. That if I know a journalist will take the story, the information, the entertainment, and even educate, create knowledge, drive that knowledge to somebody like Miriam, then I'm ready to say, let's partner. Why? Because these are the people living in poverty and exclusion. And unless we reach them, our fight to see that the national debt, to see that our budgets, to see that our plans are going to give us results, our fights cannot be complete until we get to Miriam. How many of these Miriams do you know? How many have you met? Why is it a concern today? There is the need to ensure that when we communicate, we are not only reaching those who would relate with us to translate our interactions into benefits that end on our tables or in our pockets, but our communication should actually relate with people like Miriam. And this is where you come in. How much of the investment have we made to make sure that she understands what the national debt will do to her, the management? How much of our efforts are being driven towards ensuring that she knows why we need to borrow as a nation and who will sanction? Other than letting her know that President Uhuru has gone to country XY to sign a contract. Who informs her that the money is in and whatever the money will be used on will either change her life or make her life worse? Now, for me, that's where I see our responsibility. That if you can change that one life with the way we will communicate from today on the national debt, if you can change that one life through the way you'll talk about the budget and how it is not gender responsive and how it has not targeted them from the grassroots, if you can do that, then we'll be talking of success. I would have opted to bring every fact on the table. But we also know that people don't read facts. People want what will profile them. And that's where the money is. Because our pockets can speak for us. But how about that person who should ideally be occupying the front page? Who's going to help the communities get the right information? I know we'll have deficits. I know we'll be forced to borrow. Can Miriam say no to government decision to borrow? Can she? Today, she may not. But in a year's time, she can. Because we know that when you have the right information, you can build what we call a social movement, which will be ready to challenge and will take up any space that is created. When you choose, therefore, to partner with a CSO that is seriously engaging on the ground, you are actually choosing to be a member of a social movement. And when you engage with Miriam by ensuring that she gets the right information, you've actually played your role. And at that point, you do not need to write and key in. Miriam's voice will reach where it should reach. Let me check with you. Amongst the journalists that you know, and maybe some of them are here, how many win international awards? And who and what kind of story? Yes, my mother was a teacher. I didn't manage to be a teacher, but I would have loved to. So everything I do, I try to compensate. Yes.
I gave up on winning.
I can't hear you well, especially when you turn on other.
Okay.
Because the genre changed. Because my area of specialty does not attract awards.
Mm-hmm.
Because my area of specialty journalism is oh, sure. Thank you. My area of specialty does not attract awards. Politics, economics, law, like the budget, that one does not attract awards. But I've seen a trend, and I think I'm sorry to say this because they look like rent seekers, the way the awards are going. In fact, they go when you run stories like that one of Miriam, FGM, maternal health, child mortality. That's where the awards are, and understandably so.
Okay.
Yes.
Did you know that being a subject specialist, you can now take your work to Miriam's environment and still attract an award? Is it not so? It is. So, but I agree with you, and I pray that you win an award this time, because I know you will connect with Miriam.
I'm more in the policy and administrative area of journalism than
Thank you.
the front office.
Did you know, that, and I'm not asking you alone, so even if I face him, it's a question to all of us. Did you know that Miriam can influence policy change? Miriam can actually influence policy change. And the reasons why we do not get a lot of these changes, it's because we choose to focus on the wrong people who are talking about it. When you fill your newsroom with the minister, with the professor, with, you know, whom, if I look at them, I cannot see the effects of the poor policy implementation that we're talking about. What are we trying to say? That others are speaking for Miriam. Did you imagine that Miriam can occupy that newsroom? Or that is not sellable? Or it's not marketable? Or it's not attractive? For Miriam to be attractive, your interactions with her will be critical. And when you manage to get Miriam on the platform, you've already influenced policy. And this is why this day and this conference is very, very important. Because it's meant to shift your stakeholders as journalists. And it's also meant to shift what you write. That today, when you sit down to write an article, consider that the person who can bring the change that you desire to see, because I know you're sitting here, your participation online is not for the sake of it, but to bring change. Consider writing for Miriam. Consider having a one-on-one with Miriam. We do a lot of that because we believe that the day you get to connect with the right population, your message becomes the right message. I mentioned something, a terminology, gender responsive, and the big question is, look at our deaths and look at the impact, and you will find it, that the impact of death in a community, and I like the pictorial that was shared. You saw who was carrying the house? Okay, someone dressed in a trouser and a shirt. Eh? Who remained without a roof? The woman, yeah? What we say is that women are the representation of the economy. If it's doing well, you will see it on the face of the women, and you'll also see it in the way they interact and how they interact. That you can take to the bank. And when you see them, then you've also seen the young people, and you've also seen the children. Because that is how our society has tuned itself, and hence where the burden lies. My next point is also on knowledge. Consider yourselves as very critical in terms of sharing knowledge, in fact, creating it and sharing it and interacting with those who receive it. I believe if I want to share the right message or a story that sends the message that I want and where I want it to go, if I'm to do that, the person that I work with to bring it out should understand me. And that's where we place knowledge. How do we spare our time to create it in a way that it's not elitist? How will a young person start appreciating that whether they like it or not, they'll bear the debt's burden? You saw the one on collateral. It simply depicted our future. But we say the young people are the future of a nation. So where does that leave you today when you communicate? Where does that place you today? So I said I'm standing here as a community worker, but I'm also standing here as someone who's interacted with Miriam and many more of the same. You know the way we say Wanjikus? So we could say many Miriams. And if we want lasting change, if you want impactful communication on matters debt, you have to bring Miriam on the table. It's not about the jargons that we write, but it's about how we break them down. Because I could be dressed in a suit and a tie or nicely dressed as a lady, but when I read the terms that have been used on an article, I fail to understand, and therefore, even for you, you fail to get my engagement. Therefore, it's important that you apply what I had a former colleague who used to tell me that anytime you write, ask yourself if your grandmother can understand what you wrote. Hence, what is effective communication? The bottom line is understanding and reaching her. You can reach her, but she fails to understand. So you have to reach her, and she has to understand. I'm glad I came after our friend from Cameroon did the presentation. If you look at how debt arises, at what point do you think you'd place people like Miriam, who are impacted by it massively? That again requires effective communication. How much time do we spend in our communication to ensure that Miriam engages in public participation? Because if we talk of the budget today, what went in was decided long time ago through public participation. As it's said, through public participation. How is the decision made? And where would you place those who are impacted by the debt? How are people involved? We have a very big population in Kenya called the middle class. And virtually all of us in here would fall in that category. Why are they non-responsive? And why do they opt to be keyboard warriors?
The middle class, let me use the word that Vladimir Lenin used, the most unreliable people ever to have. Because there was this problem. They have got one foot in. The middle class. Your mic is on, please.
Just push the button. Okay. Our mic is not working, but we'll proceed.
On button.
Yes, this is to have a look to people, the virtual room benefits when we use.
Okay.
Sorry, the benefit. Can you hear me? Is it on?
One.
Alert me over time.
Okay. So the problem of the middle class is that they are in a comfort zone. They have got one foot in poverty, so they have got the other foot in the upper class. But they aspire to go up. So under normal circumstances, they will not want things to change. They will want things to remain so because somehow they are comfortable. And they usually say, that the ones usually use this phrase that Americans like using it. If it ain't broken, don't fix it.
Don't fix it. Somebody else, thank you so much. From this side, I would love to hear your voices. And I hope I'm getting through to you. Anyone? You want to try? Okay, anyone on this side? It's again back to us that we could actually come up with ways of ensuring that involvement is increased so that we do not only communicate and say we wrote a nice story. Whoever receives what you've written will also value when your contribution, when the readership goes up, when the audience increases. And so involvement and engagement is very critical. Probably you could just be the ones who will crack the engagement theory, the middle class engagement approach. But why am I using the middle class? It's because unless you understand them, unless you understand that where the numbers are more, we will write for those who can pay, but the effect will still not be there. If I can pay and appear in a TV show, prime time, I'll pay, but it's not for your benefit, it's for my benefit. That I'm known either as a leader, and in the end, the numbers that we wanted to bring change, we failed to achieve them. So your presence here should also be translated to the change that is needed. And that change has to be felt right from the grassroots to the top. It hardly happens the other way around. And so you have a population that you're yet to touch. If we are to talk the true debt story, if we are to talk true inequality, and if we are to talk true poverty, there's a population that we are yet to reach.